I don't know what to make. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We want to thank everybody for tuning in to our first Flock Talk of 2021. A little bit different than years past, obviously, because of coronavirus. So we are virtual this year. List for this. So we've got Rachel Lewis. She is our have Rachel here. She's our Purina Livestock Product Specialist. So Rachel has answers to so many questions of mine. She is an asset to our team. We really appreciate having her. So we're gonna start off. I'll go ahead and show you what we've got. We've got some of the Purina products that we offer to all of these today. All of these things. It's going to be great. And if you stick with us until the end, you might just have a chance to win something. So, and if you ask a question during the talk tonight, during the live talk, your name will be put into a drawing and you'll have a chance to win something else. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So, that being said, I'm going to knock signs over. I'm going to give Rachel the floor, and she is going to educate.
All right. So, hey everybody, thank you, Cheyenne, for that introduction. Basically, my job, I have a really long title, but I'm here along with Olsen's retail staff to help you keep your animals well fed and healthy. I'm a resource for Olsen's as well as for our customers on all of our Purina options to help you reach the goals for your animals. Tonight we're going to talk about chicks and chickens. As you can see by our cute little model here, we say all chickens need love and Purina feed. So I'm glad you're all tuning in to join us today. Like Cheyenne said, if you stick with us through the whole speech, there's a little code you can text in, and we're going to send you some Purina swag for sticking with us. So thank you so much. When we're in person, we like to always play that little game where everybody holds up their hand, we see how many chickens everybody has. Starting with 0, you get some new owners who are just at the store to pick out their very first chicks. They're very excited. A lot of times there's little kids involved, and that's always really fun for me because I grew up going to events like this and learning from people like the Olsen's team and people in position like mine. And now I'm here on the other side giving back, so I'm excited to do that. Then we get to where people get up there, they have 30 chickens or 50 plus chickens. I had a lady tell me last year she wasn't sure exactly how many were in her flock, and I think she just didn't want her husband, who was sitting next to her, to know exactly how many chickens they had out there. That leads me into one of my favorite jokes about chicken owners versus chicken parents and how chicken math works. You can see just one chicken up there, just ask any chicken parent. Down to this one, only 10 chickens in this slide, right? I'm a prime example of that. I was talked by the retail staff into taking these 3 sad chicks at the very end of chick days home with me, and I went from 3 to 5 to 8 chickens. But now I travel quite a bit with my position, and so my chickens had to go be rehomed in another flock, but I go and visit them occasionally. So I would be what you would call a chicken parent. My chickens had names, I bought them treats, I would freeze vegetables for them when it was very hot and put them out. Versus what I like to call chicken owners, who think of their chickens more as livestock. They own chickens to raise eggs and probably to sell them. Whereas a chicken parent like myself and many of you out there spend a lot of time just watching chickens do foolish chicken things and a little chicken TV. So it's a great thing either way. And I guess it all comes down to why we do it. Why do we have those birds? Eggs, that's the #1 reason from either side. I like to bake, so having chickens and fresh eggs was excellent. Many people own chickens as part of their production. They sell eggs, and that's income for their family. We also own chickens because they're pretty and they're fun. Some people want a pet, and a chicken takes up a lot more space. As you can see, they're much smaller than either Cheyenne or my pets. They're also very entertaining. I spent a lot of time watching chicken TV, watching my chickens' foolish antics out in their coop. They're also a great way to help educate kids on responsibility and raising up chicks, watching them grow from a little handful of fuzz into a productive laying hen. And then kind of a side benefit that comes with all animals is that compost. Chicken manure makes great fertilizer, but do make sure to compost it. It's pretty rich and can be kind of hard on your plants if it hasn't had some age. So what do we need? We've never owned a chicken before. We're going to start fresh. What do we need? Chickens need housing. They need plenty of space, about 10 square feet per adult bird. They need high quality feed. That's what I'm here to help you with. They need clean and fresh water, protection from predators and weather. Here lately, this cold weather, if anyone has chickens at home, it can be kind of hard on the birds. And also predators. Even if you're in an urban area and you don't recognize the predators, putting chickens in your backyard will tend to bring them. It's always good to have a relationship with a veterinarian. We don't want to be having an emergency and having to find a veterinarian. We want to have a relationship with a vet before that event so that we can get it taken care of as quick as possible. In many areas, veterinarians are becoming more comfortable doing bird work because the amount of birds that people have in urban areas and everywhere seems to be increasing. I know from my talks last year, all of the places here in the Quad Cities, over in Verde, and then in Dewey, everyone mentioned that there was a vet in the area that they were working with. So if you don't have a current vet, ask your retail staff. We'll help you find one. We'll put you in touch with a chicken person.
So we had Nancy asked, if my chicks start eating pellets early, will that hurt them?
That is a great question, Nancy. We're going to talk about nutrition here a few slides down. If I don't answer your question, be sure to pop back on, wave at us again. Typically, we say that chicks start out with the start and grow until they're about 16, 18 weeks old and laying, and then we move to a layer feed because then their bodies are ready for it. Layer feed has quite a bit of calcium, and it can be hard for baby chicks to process that calcium. But we'll cover all of that later, and if that doesn't answer your question, be sure to ask us again, okay?
Thank you.
So our other needs for our chicks, before you buy them, make sure you have some time to care for them. Even the most minimal of management, your chickens are going to take some time. You gotta go out every day, let them in and out of the coop, make sure it's clean, make sure there's no issues, some feed and water, a couple hours a day probably. And then it's always good for your chickens to have girlfriends. One chicken is pretty lonely. Two chickens are kind of funny animals. The reason we call like a hierarchy of people a pecking order is from chickens. So two chickens, especially if they have some kind of conflict, can really bully each other and cause some problems. So we recommend to start with 3. See why chicken math is the way it is. Because that way it spreads out that aggression and they don't cause so many problems to each other. So how much space? Another question? Oh, we're chatting in.
Yeah, we've got, well, someone did ask because we're about heat lamps.
Okay.
And their question, I'm sorry. Do you typically use headlamps under certain temperatures? And I'm wondering if that meant, if you meant heat lamps.
I'm sure.
So Robin Rice family said, do you typically use heat lamps under certain temperatures in your housing for adult chickens, which will...
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
We will cover that in just a minute.
Even for adult chickens, we like to keep them above 40 if we can. You can do that a couple of different ways, and we do talk about that a little later. Sometimes we use heat lamps. Other ways we can make our coop small enough and kind of crowded so the chicken body heat keeps them warm enough. They keep each other warm. But we do like to keep them above 40, so that is a great question and considerations as you're going on.
Got lots of great questions, and I know some of this stuff will be answered kind of, later on in the talk too, but just so you know, Rachel, Brian asked, are they segregated by sex, and if not, how do you tell the difference between them as chicks?
So most of the sets of chicks that Olsens get are straight runs, which means that they are one sex. They'll be pullets, so they'll be chicks.
They'll be girls.
Girls.
Yes. So that
is mostly taken care of here. I think they're 99% guaranteed.
Yeah.
Cheyenne, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So the chicks that you buy from here should be guaranteed to be pullets or chicks, girls.
Okay. And then we're on the topic of housing and coops. Lily Bird asked what the best bedding is for
that is a great question. We recommend like the Terramigos pellets or like a pine shaving from small chicks all the way to adult birds. The reason we recommend that is some other types of bedding, like if you bedded your chicks on newspaper, when it got wet, it could be very slippery for them. And as you know, those spindly little legs aren't as sturdy. So that slippery is hard for them, plus it's hard to clean and keep it from getting moldy. Cedar chicks, they have that very strong smell, which we as people like, but just imagine a little baby chick right down there in those shavings. That smell can almost be toxic for them. It makes it harder for them to breathe. So we recommend either the pine shavings, try to keep the dust down, or the Terramigos pellets. I heard a lot of experienced chicken owners tell me last year that they would even go one step further and use those pellets because they're very easy to clean. You can kind of spot clean them like a litter box if you get a wet or a messy spot, and they hold up very well and they give good traction for the chicks.
Okay. Peach, lay down. This is the vlog talk, not the dog talk. Lay down.
She wants to steal your show.
She really does. She's that way. Okay, and so this kind of is both about the coop and about maybe nutrition and feeding and stuff, but Jen Myler asked if you keep food in the coop or outside only.
So we're going to talk about that right here. We talk about the coop in the inside portion. We keep that smaller than the run because we really don't want them hanging out in the coop all the time. We just want them to go in there like at night so they're safe and secure and warm and cold temperatures, and then to go in there and lay eggs, and then we want them to hang out in the run. So typically we put our feed out in the run for them. So that way they're not hanging out in the coop with the feeder.
I'm going to see if I can get a little better shot of the slideshow because well, no, it's washed out because the sun is right behind us coming through the window. I think once the sun goes down, okay. That's a little better. So I'll just stand here and there we go. Okay.
Camera per se. So back to space for chickens, we talked about each adult bird needs about 10 square feet. And we split that up 2 to 3 feet in the coop because we want that to be our smaller area. They go in there to sleep. But otherwise, we want them out in the run, so we look at 7 to 8 feet out there in the run where they're exercising, they're spending their day, they're eating, they're taking their chicken dirt baths. And so let's look at it for 4 birds. Here we go for chicken baths again. First I said, get 3. Now I'm like, let's look at it for 4 birds. So you want an 8 to 12 square foot coop, and then 28 to 32 square feet for the run. So you have about 36 to 44 square foot, or like a 6x6 or 5x9 pin. We also want to consider how deep we bury the fence and if we have covers or not. So another thing to consider behind the scenes before you get your chickens is if you live in an HOA or have a homeowners association governing what you have, make sure that there are no rules against chickens. Many places have rules about roosters and not having them, but some places are anti-chicken. And just because your neighbor has some chickens doesn't necessarily mean that it's not against the rules. So we always recommend that you check it out so that you're not attached to your birds and then someone comes knocking on the door telling you they gotta go. So that's all the behind the scenes concerns and things that we talk about, things that we want to plan for before we get home with our birds. Now we're at the store, we've picked out our cute little fluff balls. If you're me, you've given them names like Henrietta, I know, super original, right? And you gotta get them home, you put them in the brooder. This is gonna be their first home. They're in a brooder in the store and then they're gonna come home with you in the brooder. So you can see, I don't have that picture up here. You can see this is an example of kind of our ideal brooder. So you can see the rounded corners, it's hard to see up there. But it's a round shape and it has a couple of feeders and a couple of waterers. So there's ample space for your birds to get to the feed and water because it never fails, there's always a bigger chick. And you can also see the heat source there in the middle, see the chicks spread out and everybody's happy.
So I've got lots of questions on here, guys. Rachel had mentioned earlier that we're going to talk about nutrition shortly. So when we do get to nutrition, I'll ask her. We've got a lot of questions, so that's good. I'll make sure that we get to everybody's questions. And we had someone ask if after the talk they could get this slideshow emailed to them. Is that something we can do?
Yeah, we can
absolutely
do that.
Yeah, and then that way you can. I know I apologize for it was kind of hard because we had the sun coming in behind us, and it was sort of hard to see, and it's still not that great. But that way everybody can. And, this is recorded too, so it'll be on our Facebook page. So if you want to grab the slideshow, we can definitely email that to you, and then you can watch the talk again, or Rachel's always available for questions, so that's good. Yeah, she is awesome. So I did have a question that had to do with the coop. Can you mix adult bigger chickens with bantam smaller chickens in the same coop?
So we do recommend anytime you're mixing birds, for one, to make sure, like if you're mixing chicks with adult birds, to make sure that your chicks are 6 weeks old or better. And then we still recommend that you kind of fence line introduce them. So I would recommend that very much, even if you're introducing, or especially if you're introducing adult birds to adult birds, where full-size chickens are quite a bit bigger than bantams. In my experience, I had bantams and then I got full-size chickens, and my bantams ruled the roost because they were tough. I laughed about them being like little chickens.
Yeah.
We make jokes about little men. I'm a short girl. It's all the same. Dynamite comes in small packages. But I would still recommend to introduce them through a fence. I had a lady at one of my chick presentations tell me that she put her chickens that she wanted to introduce into like a wire dog kennel, and then put that kennel in her coop. So they could talk to each other through the wire, but if one was getting picked on too much, they could still get away from each other. And she kept them like that for about a week. It does make some extra work, but she felt like she had a lot less headaches and didn't need to dock her chickens that got beat up once they were together because they had a lot of their pecking order issues worked out. So that might be a great way to introduce those two flocks with the separate sizes of birds. We'd also recommend to do it in the morning, so they sleep, and then they all just go together in the morning. It's like, good morning, it's a new day, these are new chickens, oh cool.
Yeah.
And that seems to go over better than trying to introduce them in midday. I don't know, because chickens aren't morning animals, which I'm not a morning animal either, I can't bring them. Or if it just seems to like be that reset, a new day, oh cool, new chickens, and then they go about their day and just get used to each other better.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Rachel. It was a great question. And then another one to do with housing in the coop. First-time chicken owner Carrie Henderson asks, at what age do you move chicks into the coop, and when should they be allowed outside of the coop to run in the yard?
So we're actually going to get to that here in a couple of slides. So I will catch right up to you, but if you have any more questions, please feel free to ask.
Don't feel free.
Please don't ask.
Don't feel free to ask.
Please ask us.
We love it. We appreciate everybody's questions for sure.
Yeah, you bet. So, and this is a great, so you picked out your cute little fluffy chicks, and they are so cute when they're small. You take them home, you get them in the brooder, you get it bedded, which we talked about. We recommend those pelleted bedding or the pine shavings, because we want it easy to clean and good traction for the chicks. Not too smelly, not too dusty. We don't want it to grow mold. And then temperature control, we have the heat lamp or a heat source, access to feed, clean, fresh water. Little chickens, it's amazing how much dirt they can put in waters. Prepare yourselves to clean waters often, because that clean, fresh water is really important for them. Security, you want to keep Sylvester out. And then they want to have some fresh air. So it's kind of a balance about cooping them in and protecting them, but then allowing some ventilation. So we talked about this brooder with the round shape. That's really important because baby chicks especially, they're kind of easy to startle. And once they're startled, they start running like crazy. And if they have a corner to get caught in, the chicken in the front that gets in the corner can sometimes be smashed by the other chicks coming in behind. So we want to round out those corners. Even if you have a square box or a dog kennel that you're putting them in, we recommend putting a little cardboard in the corners to round them out, just trying to keep those chickens from hurting themselves. Especially when they're small, we're their only protection. We're their source of food and water and protection. So it's real important. And then temperature is the other big thing in your brooder. You can see these chicks are spread out. There's a couple under the temperature, and then some of the feeders and the waters, they're all spread out. So that tells us that that brooder is a great temperature. So we start in our first week, chicks need to be warm. They're just these little tiny, cute little fluff balls, and they gotta be between 90 and 95 degrees. So we got that heat source down pretty close to them. But then every week that they grow, they get a little bigger, they start to put on some body condition, they lose their fluff and start to get feathers, and the temperature needs to get cooler and cooler for them because they're able to better maintain a body temperature. So we say a rule of thumb is about 5 degrees per week of age. We lower the temperature.
Peach, get out of there.
But a great way to know this, putting a thermometer is great, but your chickens will also tell you. In this picture, excuse me, if we were here and we saw all those chicks clumped up in the middle where it's really bright, that would be telling us that they need more heat, they're cold. But if they're all on the outside where it's dark, then they'd be telling us, oh, it's too hot. You can raise that lamp up, we don't need quite as much heat. But this is kind of ideal. There's some in the hot zone and some in the cool zone. They're happy and doing great. So at 6 weeks, your chicks are ready to leave the brooder. They're starting to get fully feathered. They can take temperatures down to about 40 degrees. We want to keep some things in mind when we introduce them to the coop. One, is the coop empty? So are you a new chicken owner and you have a fresh new palace for them? Or do you already have some existing hens out there? Because mature hens have different nutrition than a 6-week-old chick. So this is where keeping them separate comes into play. Then also when they're that small, you can keep your nesting boxes closed. They won't be thinking about laying until 16 weeks of age. So there's no sense in teaching them to get in there and hang out. You want them to just go in there and lay. So then you move them, they've been moved to your coop inside, and you've started to introduce them to your birds, but then you move outdoor. So now you're looking at not only is the weather good, but are my chicks secure, and are they fully feathered and ready to go? Are they taking introduction to the existing flock okay? But until they're 16 weeks of age, so this is where feeding the start and grow as your brand new chick until 16 weeks of age. And that feed is designed, we're going to talk a little bit more about it, but that feed is specifically designed to develop those chicks. They grow very rapidly and they have high nutritional needs, and that feed is designed for it. Whereas your hens that are laying eggs, they're looking for a layer feed. They need the additional calcium to lay strong eggs, where your baby chicks don't need that. So until you're 16 weeks of age, you don't want to intermingle your old hens with your new chicks because they have different nutritional needs. So now we're going to talk about, that's my lead into nutrition.
Okay. Sorry. I could probably.
You could give my time.
I know she's kind of taking over.
Like, I'm a part of this.
Do you want to hit one of those light switches?
We need a little light.
On you, yeah, that one. Do that one.
So
That way.
okay on the screen. Everybody can still see us good.
Yes, and then I've got some. I had a comment.
All right. Questions, comments, bring it on.
We've got all of the above. I'm sorry the camera is shaky. I am multitasking. I'm trying to read comments and keep the camera on you guys. Okay. Brian said, summertime here, can you put up a mister to help keep them cool?
Many people put misters on their chickens. There's also a whole set of like ice freezing vegetables or even just freezing water so they can get on that as they'd like to regulate their body temperature. Okay,
and then Sydney asked, are dogs a problem with chickens?
That really depends on the dog.
Yeah.
Spice that you saw earlier, she's a border collie, and I was a little nervous when I got chickens because border collies can have a high prey drive, but my bannies were tougher than her, and they actually chased her around the yard. But you always want to, if your dog has not met chickens before, definitely supervise their interactions, and if there's any concern, just make sure to keep them separate, because when it comes to it, if your dog is not like Spice, your chickens are going to be pretty roughed up.
Okay. And then somebody else, where did it go? Oh, there we go. Karen Patterson asked what the size recommendations for ratio of chicks to size of brooder box, which we kind of talked about that.
Yeah, so in the brooder, as long as they have, I think it's like 5 inches per chick, they don't need tons of space when they're small, and they only spend about 6 weeks in there. So as long as the brooder is big enough to support as many 6-week-old chicks as you have, you're in good shape. And the nice thing about that is chickens are growing pretty rapidly, but you also have the opportunity to adapt your brooder to them. If they start to get too big for the brooder before your 6 weeks is up, maybe you have to split it into 2 or increase the size, because it's not a permanent structure like your coop is.
Okay, so, all right. And then I'll have a lot of questions still about the nutrition, so as we get into that.
To tackle that part.
All right, so let me see. I'm sorry again, guys, about all the shakiness. I'm going to see now if I can reattach this camera where you guys can still see. And then now that the sun has gone down, sorry for the shakiness. Hope I don't make anyone sick.
Just a little nervous project.
Yeah, I know. It makes it more personable, I think.
So we talked a little bit about management stuff, coop, feed, water, keep, protection from predators, and making sure that you're obeying any laws or ordinances. Now we're going to talk about nutrition. Nutrition is a very big decision. Like I mentioned before, your baby chicks start out this very cute little fuzzball that you can hold in both hands. But in a very short order, they're an armful or more. They actually double in size in the first week of their life, and by the time they're 4 weeks old, they've quadrupled in size. So that kind of very rapid growth has a lot of nutritional demands, and we're here to help you with that. So we want to grow them slow, which slow is relative for their growing period. We want to make them strong, and we want to make them healthy. Purina has launched a chick strong system. It's on all of our bags. You can see it. I think there's a little egg somewhere on that Start and Grow bag. And basically, it's the optimal combination of nutrients to support the proper growth for a strong start in your chicks. I want you to be successful. Olsen's wants you to be successful. Like, we want these chicks to live a long and happy life with you. So we want you to start strong and make sure that we build a strong foundation so that as those chicks grow into laying hens, they're very productive and they have longevity. All the vitamins, minerals, proteins, amino acids that your birds need are in these feeds. Another great component of the Start and Grow is prebiotics and probiotics to keep your chick's immune system functioning at its best. Baby chicks are very susceptible to disease, and so we want to start them as strong as we can so that you never have to deal with those kind of issues. We kind of think of it as a marathon. You know, we're the tortoise and not the hare. We want to get to the finish line and still have time to enjoy the party. We don't want them to grow too fast or too slow. It's just important that birds develop at that pace. We have a little graphic. This will kind of show you that pace. You can see they start as a little chick, and then we feed them that chick strong, Start and Grow all the way up until 16 weeks. So we go to 6 weeks, we can start introducing them to outside as long as weather permits. And then at 16 to 18 weeks, they start laying eggs. And then we transition from the chick feed to the layer feed that has different calcium requirements because those layers need more calcium for good, solid, hard egg shells. Have we covered questions? Are you getting new questions?
Oh, well, I'll go ahead and get into some of them.
Do we want to talk about the starter feed and the layer feed, or do we want to hit some of those questions?
Well, so one of the questions was, how long should chicks stay on starter feed? Right.
So we recommend that they stay on starter feed up until they lay their first egg, which is about 16 to 18 weeks, depending on the breed of chicken.
All right. And let's see. I'm trying to go back because we had a lot of good questions. Can you buy grubs or worms as an extra protein, or is the scratch enough?
So that is a great question, and we talk about scratch here in a little bit. But what we'll talk about with scratch, you know what? Let's hold on to that one. We'll talk about scratch here in just a second.
Okay, all right. So we'll answer Brian's question about grubs or worms, and then Angie said, can you tell us a little about mash?
So you're looking for like chick mash, is that?
I'll get a little more information from Angie about that.
Because our start and grow feed is like a lake consistency. So it's like a finer consistency. It would easily become a mash if you added some moisture to it.
Okay, and
if that's what she's asking.
I asked her to elaborate a little bit, so hopefully she'll come out. Okay, then what types of kitchen and garden scraps can my chickens eat, and at what age can they start eating these types of foods?
So we don't recommend that we feed our chickens any treats until they're mature birds. As baby chicks, their digestive system is also developing at a very rapid pace, and they don't have the means to do a lot of that mechanical breakdown that those types of things, including scratch, require. So we recommend to just keep them on a starter chick product until they're mature birds. So let's talk about those starter options, and then we'll hit some of those other questions as we go.
Okay.
So we, at Purina, we like to have the options that our customers need. We want to help you reach your goals, no matter what they are. All of our starter feeds are 18% crude protein, so they have lots of protein to help those developing chicks to grow straight and strong and build the muscle and digestive and bone development that they need. They also contain all the essential nutrients for that heavy development requirement. These feeds will feed from hatch to 16 to 18 weeks of life. Whenever they lay that first egg, they tell us when they're ready to transition. They have the prebiotics and probiotics for gut health and immune support, as well as we have a medicated option, which medicated isn't exactly what you think, or non-medicated, as well as an organic starter grower, which is certified organic and a non-GMO option. So now we have the medicated or the non-medicated option. Medicated means that it has a coccidiostat in it, so that your birds are protected from coccidiosis. The non-medicated doesn't have that amprolium ingredient, so the feed doesn't protect your birds from coccidiosis, so you would want them to be vaccinated to be sure that they were protected from coccidiosis, because baby birds are very susceptible to that problem. She's just
I just don't want her to rip your cords out of the
Oh, she's good.
Okay.
So you need to choose what best suits you and your birds. If you know the history of your birds and know that they're vaccinated and feel comfortable feeding the non-medicated feed, please do. If you don't know the history of your birds or know that they were not vaccinated, we would recommend feeding the medicated feed to protect them from coccidiosis. Birds, if they do end up getting sick, it can affect their longevity if it doesn't, unfortunately, in their life as a small chicken. It can be very difficult for them to get over it once they've got it.
Okay.
That usually piques some questions.
Well, someone did say thanks for the medicated feed information, as she was going to ask, and then someone else, actually the same person, Ashley, she said, what are your thoughts on what to do for worm prevention and care for our new chicks she ordered that should arrive May 26th.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on your new chicks. I hope that answered all the questions with the medicated. A lot of people see the medicated and they initially think antibiotics, and that's not the medicine that's in chick feed. It's just an amprolium product to protect from coccidiosis. As far as deworming or worrying about internal parasites on your birds, there are a few products labeled for that, and any of your Olsen's retail shop staff should be able to direct you to those products depending on how many birds you have. Typically it's an application in the water, but be sure to read and follow all the label directions on those products. Some products do require that you toss eggs for a time period because of concerns about contamination. So make sure to read all the directions on that product or consult with your veterinarian.
Does the medicated feed only protect them while they're eating it?
It does, but once they become adult birds, their immune system is much stronger, and typically we don't see coccidiosis problems in adult birds unless you're in a heavy area with a bird in. There are some other products. That's another great reason to always have a relationship with the local veterinarian so they can help you if any issues do arise.
Okay, and then what could the chicks get if not vaccinated and not eat the medicated?
So the problem is it's kind of a parasite called coccidiosis, and it causes dehydration. It causes very runny stools and dehydration. And as you can imagine, a little 4-ounce chick, there's not a lot of water in there for them to lose, and once they get behind, it's very hard for them to keep up.
So, does store-bought food contain enough calcium for egg strength, or should you supplement with extra? It's a good question.
So, in the new Purina Oyster Strong package, there is enough calcium. I'm going to talk about this again. This is a cool product. So I'm kind of a feed nerd, and it's the reason I work for a feed company. But the Oyster Strong product, so they have crunched up the calcium and it's flaked and it's right in the crumble or the pellet. So as long as the chickens are eating the prescribed amount of feed, they're getting their required amount of calcium. I know there are some calcium supplement like the oyster shell type of product, and chickens are pretty good about listening to their metabolic sources, and if they need it, they'll eat it. And chickens that are eating enough of the oyster strong product don't touch the oyster shell because they're gaining all the calcium that they need.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about feed quantities. So our new chicken owners are always like, well, do I need a 50-pound bag of feed? I'm only going to get 3 little chicks, right? Like I can fit them all in my hand. But as fast as those chicks grow, they eat a lot of feed. So let's just talk about 5 chicks. 5 chicks, from the time that you get them till the time that they lay their first egg, are going to eat 75 pounds of feed. They're eating machines.
Ooh.
So it doesn't take very many chicks to go through a 50-pound bag of feed pretty quickly. So we do say if you have the ability to store, it's probably beneficial to go ahead and go with the big bag, even though that does seem like a lot of feed for a little fluffy cotton ball that you're holding in your hands. So here we are, we're going to talk a little bit more about the layer feeds and the oyster strong. We're at 16 to 18 weeks. Our little fluff balls are fully feathered. They're outside. They're living in their dream coop. And they've started to lay eggs. So we switch to a layer feed. We have, again, many options from our traditional layer pellet or crumble, as well as the free-range product, the omega-3 product, and then a certified organic product as well. Most of those categories are also in the crumble and the pellet. They all have 16% crude protein, plus the vitamin and mineral package that your chickens need to stay strong. All are non-medicated because by this time they're adult chickens, they have a healthy immune systems, and they can fight off the coccidiosis. They don't need the help from the medication. And then they have the oyster strong package in them. One thing, if you have a mixed flock, if you have ducks or male birds in your flock, we recommend that you use a product called Flock Raiser, because roosters also don't need all the calcium that's in the layer product. To separate those, because that's a great question, we often hang our feeder with the Flock Raiser a little bit higher. Roosters tend to be taller than the chickens, they're head above. And so if we hang that feeder a little higher and away from the layer feed, that way only the rooster can get at it. Keeps your hens getting all of the things that they need out of the layer feed and not convoluting, not watering it down by getting a Flock Raiser. And then it kind of, your rooster typically kind of stays back from your hens. A lot of people, once their mixed flocks develop, they see where the rooster hangs out, and that's where they hang their Flock Raiser feeder for him. Because then he already hangs out there, so that's where he goes to get his meals. So let's talk a little bit about each of the kind of categories. We have our traditional Leina. This product has been with Purina for probably their 125 years. Leina comes in a pellet or a crumble. It depends on individuals. Some chickens like the pellets, some chickens like the crumble. Some owners like the storage. The pellets tend to stay in the feeder a little better. The crumble tends to spread around a little better. It's all about what works the best for you and your chickens. We also have the Leina and the omega-3. I should have wrote on the back of them which one is which, so I could point to which bag, but this is no big deal. You can see it up here, I think, right? The omega, oh, it's kind of off the screen, shoot.
That's okay.
It's a bag with a red bottom. You can read right on it, and any of your sales associates should be able to help you. The omega-3 is a cool option because when you feed the omega-3 feed to chickens for at least 3 weeks, After 3 weeks, their eggs actually have a higher level of omega-3 in them. So if that's something that you or whomever you're giving your eggs to needs in their diet, they need additional omegas, that heart healthy fat, and all of the health benefits that come with omegas, feeding that omega feed gets you a little more omega in your diet. So I thought that was really cool. It only takes 3 weeks of feeding that product to increase the omega levels that are in the eggs that those chickens are producing. Another great option is that certified organic. If you're in an organic program or that makes you feel more comfortable, we have an option for you. It's also a non-GMO. It still contains the oyster strong, so you're still getting all of the benefits of a complete feed in that organic form. The last one that I think is cool is the free range. The free range has black soldier fly larvae in it. So although your chickens are in a coop for their protection, they're still getting that natural source of protein from the black soldier fly like they would if they were out scavenging. So it's kind of the benefits of both worlds. They're protected by your coop, but still getting the same wild nutrition that they would be getting if they were free ranging. So pretty cool options. Questions on that?
Well, I do have a question about mites.
Okay.
So Nancy says she has one hen who gets mites a lot and wonders, and the other hens don't. She wonders what she might be able to do for us.
So mites on chickens, I think there's an oil product as well as a dust to help her get rid of the mites once she gets them. There's some natural remedies, including feeding oregano, that I've heard really good things about. Mites are one of those kind of pesky parasites that some birds get them and some don't. Birds with super strong immune systems, they fight the mites off, they never show an issue, never have a problem. But then you get one that, for whatever reason, she's just a little more susceptible. She's like the kid in class that always has this sniffly nose, and she gets the mites. I've seen the oil products that you apply topically if she's a chicken that you can get your hands on, or I've also heard about feeding oregano, and some chicken owners have great success with that.
Okie dokie.
So we had a question about this, a couple of questions I think about scratch grains earlier.
Yes.
So scratch, it's great. Like, chickens love it. They get excited to see you when you have it. There's some organic scratch grains, don't think I have a traditional bag in. But we have it in both organic and traditional. And it's fun. It's fun to give it to your chickens because they get excited about it. But part of the reason that they get excited about it is because it's like candy to them. The nutritional value of scratch, even your most fancy formulated scratch, is much less than the nutritional value of your layer feeds or your flock raiser. So we want to keep the amount of scratch that we offer to our chickens to 10% or less than their total diet. And then we also want to make sure that our birds are mature, 16 to 18 weeks old. They lay their first egg before we offer them scratch, because until then their digestive system isn't fully developed and they cannot digest the bigger, bulkier grains. And then there was a question about adding some protein to your scratch, right? That was the question from Ryan.
Yeah, if you could supplement the scratch with grubs or worms.
So adding, like either using those worms as a treat instead of scratch or adding them to your scratch is going to increase the nutritional value of that scratch, but still not going to bring it to the level of one of these complete formulated feeds. So you maybe not, when you're feeding them the higher protein from the grubs, you're not watering down your nutrition quite as much. Maybe you could go to 15% of your diet with a supplemented scratch, higher nutritional scratch like that. But you still would want to stick with primarily a complete and formulated feed for those birds so that they're getting all of the vitamin, minerals, and prebiotic and probiotic amino acid and protein that they need. Let us know if that answered your question. So all of this that we've talked about is so important because we want that baby chick to grow up to be an adult bird, to lay eggs, and to live a long and happy life with us. But predators can be a big problem. Even in urban areas where we don't think that predators exist, when we put a pen of chickens in the backyard, all of a sudden we notice that there are coyotes in our neighborhood or there are raccoons in our neighborhood where they were never there before. Because putting the chickens out, unfortunately, is kind of like a buffet for those predators. So we want to be sure that when we built our coop, we buried that wire in the ground so nothing can dig in. We've got the top covered so that a raptor can't fly in and get at our birds. We've also gotten our wire, so I know they call it chicken wire, but the openings in chicken wire is pretty big. And animals that can reach in will reach in and just wait for the birds to come to them. Chickens are pretty inquisitive. Eventually, they're going to get curious what's happening over there, and then disaster can ensue. So we want to look at wire that's a little bit smaller so that nothing can reach through and grab at our birds. If you do choose to let your birds roam around in an uncovered or more open area, make sure to keep an eye on them because, like we talked about, those predators, they sniff them out. And raptors, like a hawk, can be a pretty bad sight in your chicken pen. So we want to always keep an eye on them if they're wandering outside of somewhere where they're completely protected. Another concern, we want to keep our birds and our bird owners disease-free. You got it. So we want to make sure that you keep wildlife away from your birds. You don't want to hang your bird feeder and attract wild birds into your coop. Wild birds can carry some diseases, and we don't want to expose our chickens to those. Also, that's another reason that we keep new chicks separate for a while. Just dropping things on the floor, sorry.
That's okay.
We keep new chicks separate for a while because we don't know if those new chicks coming from a different area have been exposed to a bug that your adult hens haven't been, or vice versa. We also want to make sure to wash our hands. If we love birds, so we go to the feed store, we handle the baby chicks or chickens that are for sale, and then we go home and want to handle our birds. Make sure to wash your hands good with soap and water each time you handle any birds. We always like to keep a clean pair of shoes that we only wear in our yard, so that only the germs. Sorry, my spice was getting in the port over there. Only the germs from our yard that our birds have been exposed to are what we're getting in there. We're not tracking something in from another property. We want to keep our chickens healthy. Chickens are pretty tough, and they often tend to hide their symptoms until it's too late. So we want to do everything we can to keep them from getting sick so that we don't have to go through a recovery period. So let's start to do some summary. We buy our baby chicks. We keep them in the brooder, warm, with fresh air and clean bedding, and chicks start and grow for 6 weeks. Then they're fully feathered. They can start to be introduced outside, but they're still not ready for another feed. They want to stay on start and grow until they're 16 to 18 weeks old and they lay their first egg. Then we move them to a layer feed. We can start giving them a little treats, a little scratch, a little chicken scraps. And then we grow to love them. We expect them to lay eggs for us very productively on a regular schedule for about 3 years. Sometimes after 3 years they kind of peak, and then some chickens are much sturdier and they'll lay consistently for longer than that. But from year 4 to year 7, maybe they start skipping a day here or there. Maybe they're the first ones to start molting, so they stop laying a little sooner than some of the younger birds. But when we start them right and we take good care of them, we have seen chickens lay. I think Dawn has a chicken that's 10, and she still lays. Dawn is very much a chicken parent, and I hope she's watching and enjoying.
She is. She said hello.
Great. The oldest chicken on world record was 22 years old. So they can be a real commitment. I would imagine she was well past her prime at 22 and not laying an egg, but she probably was still very entertaining at that time. So really, like, we just want to start them right and take good care of them, and we're here to help you do that so that you can enjoy your chickens for years to come.
All right, so Rachel, thank you so much. Let me, okay, we had a few people ask what the number to text was, so there it is, 57682. Text Purina to 57682 to be entered to win
Hold on,
some.
I want this flag too, so.
Oh, I'm going to enter that too. Yeah, that's not. Heck, fair game.
All right, did we hit all the questions?
Let me check.
Give us
Okay.
a shout in that chat box if you have questions or
So,
we missed you.
I did have one question about, da, 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 da. Let's see. So Brian was the one who asked about supplementing with grubs and worms,
Mhm.
and he said not just chicks, but adults too. Is that something?
Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend it with chicks just because we go back to their digestive system. Chicks don't have grit in their system, so they can't masticate. They can't chew up food like that. So they don't do mechanical digestion the way adult birds do. So that's why grub would be more difficult for them. But I would definitely give you the green light to add it to scratch or treats for your adult birds because they have grit in their system and can break down bigger particles like that. And it would be a way to increase the nutritional value of your treats and scratch.
All right, and then hopefully that answered your question,
Yeah, please let us know.
Brian. And let's see, someone else had asked, how many chicks would you need for a dozen eggs a week? I guess eventually, obviously, hens. But
Yeah, so we like to say that your healthy chicks starting strong once they start regularly laying eggs, which is going to be after 18 weeks typically. They should lay in 80 days. So that would take 12 chickens to get a dozen.
so, oh, okay, we've had so many great questions. Karen did say she did the text, but it won't let her complete the survey. I will get with her after the video to see if I can help her.
There are a few questions, and make sure to click your local Olsen so we can keep track of where you're watching.
Yeah, make sure that you're following us on here, and we're going to have another flock talk with Dawn, our lovely manager at our Clarkdale location.
She's our chicken queen.
She is chicken crazy, and we love her for it. So be sure to come back. We'll have another event on here March 11th, same time, 6 p.m. And let's see. We have another question. Okay.
Great.
What could be wrong if your hens are not laying daily?
There could be a few things. Temperature and daylight, as well as protein requirements and calcium requirements are all kind of the four main things that your chickens need. I should know the hours of daylight that they need, but I can't figure it off the top of my head. Dawn, if you're out there, I'm phoning a friend.
She is on here, but it might take a second for her to hear it because there's a delay.
Those are the four things that I would consider if my chickens weren't laying regularly. So I would want to make sure that they were either on an Oyster Strong product or they were getting some additional calcium supplementation. I would make sure that they're getting no more than 10% treats and scratch and 90% of complete layer feed so that they're getting all the protein, vitamins, and minerals that their body needs for that process. They also need to probably be consistently above 40 degrees and then I might have to go to Google to know how many hours of daylight, consistent hours of daylight also is a factor on consistent laying of eggs.
Okay. Well, I had a few people say they were having trouble with the text, so I'll be sure to follow up with you guys and see if I can find out why that's not working. But we greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. Hopefully we got to everybody's questions. If not, just go ahead and leave a comment. We'll be on here for a couple more minutes. And if we don't get to you before the end of the video, we'll be sure to reply to you afterward. Thank you, Rachel.
You bet. I'm going to leave you guys with this. There's lots of resources for you if you're thinking about it later, or you get back on Facebook and you watch again and you think, oh, I should have asked. Feel free to send us a message or give us a call and ask. Or you can also ask any of your retail staff or go to purinamills.com/chickdays. There's tons of resources there, as well as our Purina Poultry Facebook or Pinterest or YouTube channel. Some of the videos are really fun, by the way. Or Instagram. So there's lots of resources out there, including myself and all of the Olsen staff who are here to help you. But there's some other places that you're welcome to look if you think of questions later on.
Fantastic. Okay, everybody. Well, thanks again. If you do want this, I'll come to the front of the thing here. So I feel like I'm the ghost narrator. Hopefully they can see me. Hi. If you do want this emailed to you, just send a private message to the Olsen's page, or you can email me at cbrown. Can you see me? Am I good? Am I in frame?
Perfect.
So, or you can send an email to cbrown@olsensgrain.com, and I will be sure to send you this presentation. And it'll have all this information, and you can always come by the store and ask us in person. Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you March 11th.
Thank you.
Bye.